Most successful real estate firms in America are paying for a CRM, and most of them are paying for a very expensive, very sparse database. The best deals, the real relationship, the note that might have saved the renewal, it's all sitting in someone's inbox or their head, and it never makes it into the system. Here's the thing. It's not because users are lazy. It's because they're paid to close business. So they enter the minimum required to satisfy the boss, and it doesn't help that these systems require the thing that no successful broker wants to do or has time to do. Sit down and type it all in. Every user makes a decision every day after every meeting. What's in it for me? Do I need to do this to get paid? Okay, I'll enter. Do I need this info to help me for my next follow-up call? Well, I'll get back to that when I get to the office. Or I'll schedule the follow-up call in Outlook and review my notes if I can't remember. I'm Todd Terry. This is the AI brief for CRE. Normally, Wes is the one asking me the questions. Today, we're flipping it because the next part is his baby. Wes Snow built our AI suite, and he's the one who's watched what it actually does on a broker's desk. So today, I'm the one asking, Wes, how do you get a broker's CRM to fill itself?
Thanks, Todd. We've been selling CRM for 30 years, and I've never met a single broker who has claimed that they like entering in data. It just doesn't exist. And it's not an exclusive problem to commercial real estate. It's any professional who is being asked to enter data into a CRM system. And for years, we've tried streamlining forms and navigation screens and things of this nature, but the problem has still been pervasive. And with the advent of AI, we have now seen an opportunity to reduce a lot of this friction that exists between the end user and this system of record we call the CRM system. To your point, nobody has ever doubted that there's value in centralizing data and collecting it, and that you can only remember so much. But left with the choice of making another phone call, closing a sale, writing up a lease, or entering in data, the former is going to win every time, considering this friction. I call it the tax. We've levied a tax on the end user to get data in, and more importantly, once they get the data in, getting the data out isn't necessarily streamlined either. But all of that really, really changed about 2 years ago and has continued to evolve into figuring out what is the most commercially relevant use case for AI for the commercial real estate brokerage arena. And with our heritage being in system of records like CRM, we began focusing on that in that particular area. And it was clear that there were some opportunities to reduce that friction and remove that tax, or repeal that tax, if you will, using it. And my hope is today, after you get through seeing what we've come up with, that you'll have a refreshed opinion of what a CRM can do for your personal book of business and for the brokerage as a whole. So with that said, let's get into some visuals here, because talking about it's great, but being able to see something that's real, and everything I'm showing to you is in market. It's not hypothetical. It's not a proof of concept. This is real tooling around AI to allow for the broker to be more efficient in using these systems of record. So when we were evaluating AI implementations, one of the things that we thought of was, well, where is all this data originating from? And reality is the digital footprint or the relationship oftentimes starts in an email sent back and forth, and there's really rich information that's contained in those emails. Think of initial introductions, think of lease requirement, and even getting further into it, lease comps that are sent to your inbox, broker's opinion of value, offering memorandums. These are all documents that are constantly flowing in your inbox, and unfortunately, that's where that data goes to die. It's very infrequent that data is entered in for all the reasons that we just mentioned. And so I want to show how that calculus changes here. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly. So this is one of the modules of a suite we call the Ascendix RE AI Suite. And in it, you can see on the left-hand side an email that was sent to me in my inbox, and I simply forwarded it to this AI component within our CRM tool. It's a traditional email that indicates interest in a particular property or a listing, details around the square footage needs and things of that nature. And in this case, what you would have done historically is to take that name and the company and the phone number and the email address and the requirements, and you'd start entering that into the system. Well, now with the AI tool, it takes all the body of the email and infers what it is that you want pulled from it. And it starts to suggest records that you might want to enter into the system. In this case, a prospective tenant in the market for Barclays Pet Market, also a contact for Marcus Delgado, who is the sender of this email. And then more specifically, you can see details around the lease requirement where it shows the inquiry name, the name of the company. It's already parsed down the first name and last name, email and phone number, all of which have been done for you and on your behalf, as opposed to having to go through the process of data entry. So that's one example. Let's go to another one. So it's not infrequent that brokers will swap comps, and they'll oftentimes do that perhaps verbally, but also via email. And so this is an example of an email that I forwarded to our tool called Harvest, which harvests the data out of the email. And in this scenario, the body of the email is rather brief, but if we looked at the attachment to that email, you'll see that there's two lease comps that describe the tenant, the property's address, effectively the suite, which is the beginning of the lease details, the square footage, rate, etc. And again, unless you have the intestinal fortitude to take the time to go in there and enter all this data, it doesn't happen. And so if you see this, you'll notice that there's two tenant records at the company level that are already in here. There weren't any details around the contact that were provided. But then you've got properties. I've already committed one property to the database, and there's yet another one. And then the all-important lease comp, if you will. And so if we open this up, we can go to the attachments, and we'll see the lease comps for reference, and allows us to understand where it pulled the data from. And so we've got Suite 720 that's being pulled here. We've got the square footage that are all detailed out, as well as the commencement and the expiration date. And so this is a friction remover that we've had great resonance with in our calls with folks who are interested in trying to streamline things. Gosh, we had to create 5 or 6, maybe 7 records here, and all that's now done for us and on our behalf, with all doing nothing more than just forwarding the email. So that's one segment, Todd, that I wanted to showcase.
Yeah. So to any of users or brokers who are watching this right now and they're thinking to themselves, why should I trust AI to write this information into my database? What do you tell them?
Yeah. So the temptation would be to just forward it and forget it, right? But the reality is we are talking about AI. It can be sycophantic and it can hallucinate. And this is, after all, an asset that you're growing. It should be something that you care and feed for. And so as you'll notice, we're not directly writing the records that have been suggested from the abstraction process, but giving the end user the ability to go in there and review that and make sure that the data is accurate. And so we, in our product roadmap, have no plans to remove this, what I'll call audit mode. But ultimately what it does is it moves you from a data entry clerk into really just a data reviewer. And as you can see, the vast majority of that data has already been entered in, or at least prepped for being entered into the database with nothing more than a click. So a couple clicks of review, and moreover, it gives you a chance to enrich that data. It may be that there's details about this lease or the property that you know that weren't contained in the email or the attachment, that with this particular interface allows you to augment or enrich, or in some cases correct it. Hear you loud and clearly. We want to protect the asset, which is your data in this centralized system here, and don't want it just to unilaterally start writing records there. It deals with duplicates as well. It may be that you forwarded an email that contains a property that already exists in the system, and we deal with that as well. So we're not only ramming data in unilaterally, but we're also not creating records that are duplicates, which ends up becoming even a larger problem.
It's great, really.
So let's switch to the next aspect here. And so that was one way of getting data into the system, is harvesting the nouns, the people, the places, and the things from within your email box. But we also see friction with just general usage of the CRM tool, getting companies and contact records in, properties, scheduling follow-up tasks, and capturing requirements from prospective tenants or buyers. It's there, and we felt like we wanted to tackle that head on. And so What we've introduced is an agent within inside of the tool that really helps to reduce that friction. I just had a meeting with Peter Berg of Berg Partners and would like you to create a new company and contact record for Peter. Peter's email address is peter@bergpartners.com and his phone number is 214-557-5557.
What are you using to get that information in spoken text?
Yeah, that's what I was going to speak to. There's a couple things going on here. I didn't do any typing there, right? Moreover, I was just speaking into the computer, and most of you may be familiar with this being something that you would do on an iPhone or an Android device, but there are inherent speech-to-text transcribers that reside inside unknowingly your MacBook and PC. There are other third-party tools here, but what I'm leveraging today is just simply the inherent speech-to-text hotkey that I've set up on my MacBook so that I reduce the typing dramatically. The thing that I'll also mention here is that I didn't have to put any cryptic syntax in here. I just spoke normal English like I'm talking to an assistant across the desk, right? But now I'm talking to my virtual assistant, if you will. As you can see here, it's put in the information for Berg Partners here. We've got Peter Berg that's related to this particular property. And this is, I think, an important point to draw from. It's not just creating the records, but it's responsibly stitching those together. And so you can see that there's this connection between Peter Berg, the contact, and Berg Partners. I can't tell you how many times people have entered in a company record and then they enter in a contact record, yet they orphan that contact record with the company. And when it comes time to look at the entire relationship that you have with a company, you're not getting all of the relationship strength. You're just getting those that you successfully connected to that company. So that's one example. And that's just fundamental blocking and tackling, the very start of the journey with a particular relationship. And now, as you can see, didn't enter any of this data, spoke it into existence. And now if we just go down the path of normal progression here, schedule a follow-up task to call Peter Berg in 2 weeks to discuss the target properties I found. Historically, you go into the contact record, add an activity, and that would synchronize to Outlook so you see it on your calendar. Now, we've just spoken that task into an existence. And so if we go here, we can see that sure enough, the task is entered in and it's related to Peter Berg, which you can now see on his activity timeline. So let's get into something a bit more immersive here. Those are examples of getting data into the system. But as I mentioned, friction exists both on getting data in and also getting data out. I mentioned earlier that very few brokers I've met enjoy getting data in, and consequently they don't enter it in. And even the same number, if not greater, find it difficult to get data out. You have to teach them how to create list views, conduct complex searches, or write reports. So let's show you an alternative to that. Show me payment vouchers for Wesley Snow related to deals that closed in the last 60 days. So here you go. That search would have been extremely complicated for any broker, and candidly, maybe even for me to go in there and to have crafted. But now, just speaking plain English, I now have a list of all of the payment vouchers that are associated to me, both the gross and the net. And if we shrink this down, we can see other details if it was even paid. So these are great unlocks for someone not only to get data in, but also get data out.
So just to recap a little bit, Harvest, it helps you get the rich information into the CRM system, including attachments and the information that's contained on the attachments and the body of the email. And now you can use the AI agent to help you enrich information further using natural language. And that's cool. And now you've started to show search. I think the users can see this, the people watching the video, but how is this search different than the search field that's been there for 20 years?
Yeah. So, we have tried really hard to make it simpler for people to go in there and create interesting queries without having to be a PhD in SQL programming. But the reality is you have to know where fields exist. You have to know what record those fields are on. and you have to give it proper syntax. And for those who have used CRM tools, there's your global search capabilities. We've even brought in tools like Ascendix Search that help to kind of streamline this, but there's nothing that actually increases the speed and the intuitiveness beyond this particular searching facility here. You can't beat it. You speak to the computer and it figures out the query for you. Just as evidence of that, if you go into the search criteria, you would have had to have been knowledgeable enough to know the deal, the actual close date, and other details that you just simply wouldn't know where to even look for. So it's a good question, but ultimately we know the audience and we know the technical aptitude there, and we must insulate them from this in order to actually get them to use the tool.
Yeah, and just to highlight one more point. So it's because this information is stored in a real database, not buried in Outlook emails and notes. The agent can help the user find and synthesize the information more effectively, but that's their own data. That's enough comparing to if you were searching all this information in your own Outlook. But by using a system like this, there's information likely provided by the organization that also is sitting next to that information that would be very valuable to the user.
Yeah. So inherent in a CRM, and it should be brought to the surface, great point, Todd, is that this is information that has been appropriately stored centrally so that in the instance where others would benefit from some of this data, then it would be there. To your point, if it's in Outlook, you're the only one that's seeing it. Now, when it comes to payment vouchers and so forth, that clearly is going to be very personal. But when it comes to centralized leases and sale comps and property records, if that's all sitting in your own private island of data, nobody else benefits from that. And so the brokerage is not as wise as they would be without having all that data democratized and centralized in a system. So it's a good call out. So those are two tools that reside within the CRM tool. But what we recognized is as AIs become more popular, as familiar as an email account and a mobile phone and laptop are in terms of tools of the trade for brokers, so too are AI tools, whether it be Claude or ChatGPT. And so what we've done in our AI suite is create a connector between their experience with Claude or ChatGPT to the database, the system of record, in this case, the CRM system called Ascendix RE. And so for those who have had great benefit in leveraging AI, you've constantly had to ground it with data. And wherever that data might be, a spreadsheet or a PDF, pulling that in is something that is a prerequisite before you can actually work on it. AI is only smart as the data it has access to. And when it comes to private domain data, a good bit of that oftentimes does exist in systems like a CRM system. And so imagine the friction having been removed of getting data in, whether that be through the harvest tool or through the AI agent, and now being able to suspend disbelief into thinking, okay, if those tools are real and they work, then the data set that I have inside of my CRM system is much more robust. So now think about connecting an AI tool to that robust set of data and think about what could be done there. And that if you're getting benefit from the tool and this is a familiar interface and it's intuitive and it's where you're doing work, we wanted to bring the CRM to where you are as opposed to force you to have to go to the CRM system to benefit from AI. And so here are a couple of examples that showcase this. And again, I'll underscore, this is a Claude instance that's been connected to our Ascendix RE CRM system, and the data that you're about to see isn't coming from public domain. It's not coming from a spreadsheet. It's coming from the database. North Point Holdings inquired on Stillwater Tower. They need about 15,000 square feet of Class A office in or near Uptown. Their budget is around the mid-30s to the low 40s. Beyond Stillwater, which of my other active listings also fit what they're looking for? Show the building, the submarket, the available space, and the owner.
I'd like to see the SQL statement behind that one.
So here we have it. We didn't have to go build a query or a report. We spoke natural language inside the AI tool that perhaps you're comfortable with, in this case, Claude, and it provided me a result set of the fits for the North Point Holdings requirement set. It even gave me some advice on listing to skip. And so it's not just giving me the data that I asked for, but it's also enriching it with a little bit of exception handling there. Let's just drive into another example here. Look across my active landlord rep listings on the market in the last 6 months that have marketing activity logged this year, which are performing, long on market, or generating marketing activity, but few or no qualified inquiries and tours. For any that are stalling, tell me what the activity notes suggest is the cause. And here we go. Again, no need to understand where the data is in the database. No understanding certain fields. Just let Claude go out there and infer what your intents are, and with their understanding and grounding with the database that it's been connected to, which we've optimized, it surfaces that information in a very consumable way without that tax or friction here. So it gives a couple of listings that have stalled and a little bit of narrative as to why. So that's the desktop. Now, not all of us are sitting behind our desk 24/7. Oftentimes we're out in the field. And so there's a real breakthrough with being able to make this available to you on a mobile phone as well. And while we have a mobile application inside of our CRM tool, when you take mobility combined with the power of this that you just saw and bring it to an iPhone, there's a tremendous amount of unlock that happens. So let's bring up an iPhone and show how that works. All right, here's the setting. I'm rolling down the road. Maybe I pulled off, but ultimately we all know what we do. We drive and talk at the same time. And so instead of having a conversation with a person, I'm actually having a conversation with my AI tool. And so let's go through an example here. Bright Harbor Advisors is moving to Dallas. The contact is Marcus Winslow. Marcus's email address is marcus@brightharboradvisors.com, and his phone number is 469-555-0273. They need Class A office in Dallas with around 10,000 to 18,000 square feet. Their current lease expires March 15th, 2027. Please set them up. And there we have it. Without typing a thing, rolling down the road, I've got a new company record, a new contact record, and I've also created what we refer to as a preference record that captures their space requirements, their expiration date, and other details that I learned of in my last conversation with them. Huge unlock here in that in the past, you likely would have waited till you got to the office to do this, and that nobody's going to fat finger in a bunch of records in a small form factor mobile device there. Or moreover, you probably didn't enter this information in at all. And so it's just a huge breakthrough, I think.
Yeah, I don't have to be the one to tell you that we've been obsessed with our users' experience. And we've been asked the question from users, why should I use this system? Or from decision makers saying, why should I invest in this system? And, no matter how much executive management mandates, it ultimately comes down to, what's in it for the user. And what I'm seeing here is this is the difference between a richly populated system full of useful information about relationships, comparables, deals, versus the minimum amount that gets done so the broker could get paid. I didn't see you scrolling around the system, popping open menu items, filling out pick lists, reviewing which reports you have to run to get an answer. I see an enabled user, friction removed, and a system that, with the arrival of AI and tools like this, has finally started to achieve the potential that we as builders of software knew was there all along.
Yeah. Bottom line is, you're not going to get value out of a system unless you put data into it. And that data needs to be more than just the bare minimum. It needs to be rich and so forth. And so for me, I believe this with all my being, that this is really the first time that we can honestly say that there are elements of a CRM tool that have been removed that give us a really, really good chance of getting that adoption there. I'll state it again. Most brokers intellectually appreciate the value of getting data centralized, but they're just simply not willing to pay the price that it takes to get that value out of the system. I think that's changed fundamentally here.
Yeah, I would agree.
So what have we shown here? A recognition that AI is here to stay, and then a translation of how AI can actually benefit a broker tomorrow. There's a lot of folks that are experiencing FOMO. They hear AI out in the world. They want and they're eager to figure out how to unlock that for their own business and their own brokerage there. And our job is to be that translator as both a professional services firm, as a product provider. And today we've clearly highlighted practical, real examples of how we can leverage artificial intelligence to enable that end user to actually finally achieve the promise of what a CRM system promoted years ago, and now I think really can be achieved.
When I'm thinking of the many projects that we've done over the years, what we had to go through with our customer to achieve success in any type of system of record implementation, there needed to be a clear vision of what is the CRM system meant to accomplish, and a clear something for the user, for them as well. And we've seen over the years the same system, but some are very successful, some are moderately successful, and some aren't successful. No difference between the system. And I think ultimately it's come down to what is the driving vision for the system, and to what extent does it really unlock the user and try to reduce the friction. I think I read something years ago that I still think applies today, and that is the difference between companies who have a CRM system and those who maybe failed to implement one is that more of their users are reaching their quota. They're achieving those financial expectations that the company sets for them. And obviously everybody wins when more of the users are achieving those quotas. The thing that's most exciting about this is that when we target anything that focuses on removing the friction between the user and the system and allowing them to more successfully get information in or out, the natural byproduct of this is a more successful implementation.
100%. And at the end of the day, what does a brokerage do? They manage supply and demand, trying to match demand with supply. And what they've been asking for years are tools that help them with that process. And I think we finally arrived at a place here, thankfully because of AI, that allows them to achieve that with minimal tax and minimal friction, enabling the end user so that they can behave and leverage themselves like they never could before. The other thing that I'll mention, in that we've highlighted a lot of our product, it should be worth noting, we're not just a provider of our own products here, but we have a vibrant AI consultancy and just a general consultancy that if you already have a CRM tool, some of the things that we've shown today, we absolutely can help enable for you. So if any of this has resonated and you'd like to have a conversation about your current situation, heck, maybe some of you don't even have a CRM system. That would be one parting comment, right? AI without a system of record to deposit all the findings and the threads of conversations you've had is going to be limiting in terms of the value you can get. So if you're sitting there and you do not have a CRM system, let's have a conversation. If you already have one and it's not ours, which certainly there are those out there, that doesn't prevent us from having a conversation. I think there's some interesting ways we can help you with that as well. So I think, Todd, for purposes of today's podcast, we've done a pretty good job of covering what we wanted to. Anything else?
I think you've wrapped it up quite nicely.
All right.
Thanks, Wes.
Very good. Thanks, everybody.